Never again. That's what we Germans always tell ourselves. This should never happen again. And it surely won't, right? I mean, we now know how fascism looks like. World War II changed the game. That's why it's time for a redesign. A friendlier and more quiet form of fascism that slowly creeps its way into society. Remember, fascism does not equal fascism, but the aestheticization of politics remains. In a way that doesn't come with aggressive militarism, but in a disguise of technocratic bureaucracy, corporate control and manufactured media staging. Welcome to the age of friendly fascism. Modern fascist aesthetic is therefore incredibly hard to spot, as there's no historical blueprint I can point at. While in the past fascist ideologies were more clearly unified and bundled and presented one ideology, today there are countless splitter movements that may differ in various aspects but still have clear fascist characteristics in ideology and therefore optics. The debate about whether this or that can ultimately be attributed to fascism is, in my opinion at least, not really relevant, as the debate about a definition only distracts from what is currently happening. I will now show you specific visual aspects, especially in Western contexts, which I believe show ideological connections to traditional fascism. The best thing I can do here is to let the aesthetics speak for themselves. The neo-futurist art movement has no connection to fascism as it did back then. No glorification of violence, war, and macho culture. What overlaps though, however, is the idea of a utopia, driven by technological progress, aesthetically represented in minimalism, dynamic curves, coldness, and futuristic sci-fi looks, speed, and momentum. So it's no wonder that many Silicon Valley companies in particular are adopting this aesthetic. I do see a philosophical connection between the early 1900s futurists and today's tech bros. The desire for a future in which technology will save the world.
And it's time to rebuild America.
There is a cult surrounding tech bros like Musk and Zuckerberg. Beyond just their wealth, the whole techno-optimist mindset helped foster a culture where these absolute losers could be idolized. Libertarians like Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Thiel also clearly reflect the macho culture, as was the case in classic futurism.
I think having a culture that celebrates the aggression a bit more has its own merits that are really positive. It's one thing to say we want to be kind of welcoming and make a good environment for everyone, and I think it's another to basically say that masculinity is bad.
If you take a closer look at the glorification of war, the glorification is striking when you look at companies like Peter Thiel's Palantir. The ties between Silicon Valley and the military-industrial complex run very deep. A tech utopia, led by strong men. The glorification of power, progress, masculinity, and military dominance now comes in a context of slick minimalist corporate advertising or image campaigns rather than the avant-garde art movement of futurism. Imagine a tech-driven future in which corporations rule the world, climate change destroyed entire cities, fixed social hierarchies exist, and Ryan Gosling slowly bleeding to death. I think we can all agree cyberpunk might look cool, but is a future nobody really wants. So, how do I sell a future that will most likely happen, but with a less dystopian look? You've seen the line, right? That's solarpunk. Solarpunk is meant to be the optimistic counterpart to cyberpunk, a utopian aesthetic where nature and technology coexist in harmony. It combines tradition, conservatism, and polished tech futurism at the same time. Solarpunk does indeed represent a certain counter-movement to neo-fascist concepts, but there are dangerous tendencies into which the aesthetic could drift off. In the context of the so-called eco-fascism, authoritarian forces can be misused to emphasize blood and soil nationalism, population control, and racialized conservation. The danger is that the aesthetic of harmony with nature can be repurposed for exclusionary or nationalistic goals, an aesthetic that is used by nations such as Saudi Arabia or Israel. A polished visual world that is intended to whitewash, the blood of regimes. An attempt to erase bad PR after entire populations have been erased. Solarpunk is an excellent Trojan horse to maintain the illusion of a tech utopia and to sell the people a beautiful image that's worth aspiring to and fighting for. This aesthetic takes on fascist traits when the utopian imagery basically only depicts white people, relies on Eurocentric aesthetics, or presents colonialist imagery. That utopia becomes worth expanding for. Basically Helldivers.
And spread managed democracy throughout the galaxy. Become a hero. Become a legend. Become a Helldiver.
The fact that tech plays an almost religious role in Silicon Valley is not groundbreaking, especially when tech and consumer fetishism come together. Luckily, the tech bro cult isn't political at all. That's what they're saying, at least. The MAGA movement clearly has aesthetic similarities to cult-like structures. A selected messianic leader who will return America to its former glory and bring the elites to justice.
With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Of course, it's not just MAGA. Look at the AfD's Björn Höcke, for example. The aestheticization is just nowhere near as uniform and intimidating as it was in the 1920s. Mobilizing that way simply wouldn't work nowadays anymore. Numerous neo-fascist movements either collapsed or never gained momentum because of that. But the mystical nonsense is still there. Similar to 1930s Nazi rhetoric of the Jewish well conspiracy, modern fascism is dependent on conspiracy theories and vice versa. They are mutually reinforcing systems. Conspiracism supplies the emotional fuel, while fascist movements channel that fuel into political action. The rise of digital ecosystems has accelerated this feedback loop, making conspiracy-driven neo-fascism a growing global threat to democratic stability. In the US, far-right movements strongly overlap with Christian fundamentalism, or in India, Hindu fundamentalism, in Afghanistan, Islamic fundamentalism, and in Israel, Jewish fundamentalism. Unlike in the 1920s, religion isn't just opportunistic, it's central, a nation and leader chosen by God, with the Bible as the highest law. Therefore, patriotism is your duty to show your gratitude towards your God. The fusion of fundamentalist religion with authoritarian nationalism.
Pastors socially distancing, mitigating, and walking with BLM. BLM, by the way, which is funded by Soros and founded by a lesbian Marxist who prays to Satan.
The esoteric occult mysticism of the Nazis is replaced with Christian aesthetics. It's also, of course, not an exclusive US-based phenomena. When looking at other nations, religious fundamentalism is often used to justify the power hierarchy. And linking one's own nationality with supposedly sacred values produces a threatened image of identity that must be regained. It not only produces a longing for the past, but also a fear of losing this collective identity, culture, and supposed values. Drifting off into fantasyland serves one clear purpose: to manufacture the illusion of a deep ancient foundation for their ideology. Nostalgia for the past is still a major theme. Instead of addressing concrete changes in living conditions, people are promised a return to some traditional good old days like the 1950s or Reagan's 1980s in the US, Russia with the Soviet Union, or Germany with trying to bring back traditions in order to revive a lost culture, a lost nation. How this is exactly supposed to improve the lives of the people? Don't ask, bro. It just feels right, bro. And it's not just the culture that's lost, it's masculinity too. And weirdly, it's exactly the same narrative as in the 1920s. And for all its rebranding, far-right aesthetics constantly recycle the same old Greek, Roman, Nordic masculinity tropes, propagating the same message Mishima would be proud of. Having a strong body is moral, and men with weaker bodies are immoral. Okay, we are now slowly getting into online culture war. This is the goofy zone. Everything I'm showing you now is very stupid, cringe, and laughable. You could basically repeat everything I said in my previous video about fascist masculinity, hypermasculinity, aggression, dominance, strength, back to tradition, militarization of the male body. What can be mentioned, however, is the hustle culture. While in the past gym bro aesthetics were already big in the 1920s, linking physical pride and strength with money or cars is a more recent twist. A serious consumption of hustle content could potentially lead to even more content tailored towards young men. Fitness, routines, self-help content, then to apolitical podcast bros, dating advices, and lastly, why the man crisis really exists. A deep dive into this pipeline can be seen here. In line with today's irony-poisoned social media zeitgeist, the manosphere aesthetic doesn't even live up to its own ideals. Neither did many men in the 1920s and 30s, of course. But hypocrisy has reached new heights these days.
We literally ended up in this position because everyone's a fucking That's how we ended up here.
I made a whole video about this as well if you're interested. It's now more prevalent than ever that behind all theatrics and flexing hides deep insecurity that has to be overplayed. I mean, if you have to use filters and music to reinforce your toughness, don't be surprised when people think you're still stuck in puberty. Looking at the optics of online bro culture alone can actually be very cute, seeing these softies staging themselves as some stoic philosophical hero online. And I'm a softie too, but I'm not pretending like I'm not.
I think it's none of your business, but I don't want you to think I'm triggered by you. I'm not. Okay. I saw somebody say that and I think that's interesting. I think you're annoying, but I'm not triggered.
And like every overdramatic theater kid, you just can't help yourself telling everyone how hard your life is, how much you struggle your whole life, when in reality, you might have no idea what real struggle is. So you have to pretend like you do. I have no idea myself. I don't know what it's like. I'm privileged. What differentiates this from this is that one of them is more honest and mature than the other. As usual nowadays, everything is just shit and giggles until you realize what real-world consequences this has.
Obesity comes from you Jews affecting our media.
They have taught us World War II history like we're children. And they freaked out when I shared a BBC documentary, no less, because they had tried to like wipe this from the universe about how Germans were ethnically cleansed. Stalin's, there's a book written by a guy, last name Kaufman, I'm blanking on the first name, where he said it's Germany must perish.
As absurd as the appearance might seem, there are unfortunately many who might laugh at it at first, but then start taking parts of it seriously. What started out as an ironic joke slowly turns into, well, there might be something to it. The absurdity and especially the irony works great as a shield against criticism. Because, hey, none of this was really serious, right? Boys inside the manosphere love to identify themselves with characters from pop culture. Whether it's Thomas Shelby, Patrick Bateman, or so-called edgelord characters like Joko or Eren Yeager. Edgelord characters are particularly popular with incels because they see themselves in them. You know, the misunderstood outsider of society who are the actual victims. Or just straight up Nazi Superman. Edgelords break taboos or cross boundaries to provoke, often through sarcastic, dark humor. This mindset is clearly reflected in their visual aesthetics. That's why it's common to see references to provocative imagery involving extreme figures like Nazis, mass shooters, or serial killers in incel subculture. These are often used to grab attention to epically trigger snowflakes who take everything too seriously. The dehumanizing ideology of incels is especially visible in the cartoon-like portrayals of racist offensive caricatures like Chads, Janks or Chirones. These exaggerated figures may come with a tone of ironic dark humor, but are clearly ill-intended and just plain cruel. The caricatures closely resembles anti-Semitic cartoons or other forms of dehumanizing propaganda from the past. Unlike the Nazis, who used eugenics to justify racial hierarchies, incels used eugenics to measure attractiveness based on external traits. This reinforces the fascist tone of their visual symbolism. The value of a human being becomes quantifiable. The higher your attractiveness, the higher your worth. I was actually trying to avoid the topic of incels because this frankly seems like a bottomless pit. The aesthetics of incel ideology deserve their own deep dive, so I'll be covering that in a future video. In a nutshell, men and women believe in fixed hierarchies in society. They have scorn for women, glorify violence, emasculate men, see themselves as victims, talk about conquering women, are fundamentally anti-feminist, justify or belittle assault, hate queer people, and love minors? I am so done with the manosphere, man. Let's just move on. What's next? Oh no.
Pronouns!
Yeah, I know. We're all tired of Gamergate. Me too. But if you want to talk about far-right aesthetics, we can't ignore the most ridiculous, embarrassing and stupid corner of the internet. One that heavily overlaps with the manosphere. Gamers. It's pointless to try and have a political conversation with many male gamers since they will insist they're totally apolitical. They just want to keep politics out of their games. Right? Steve Bannon? You can activate that army. They come in through Gamergate or whatever and then get turned onto politics and Trump. If you're part of a fandom or a gamer and chronically online, you've definitely seen these thumbnails, right? Very similar to the ones floating around in the manosphere bubble. Women in these thumbnails are often emotionally hysterical or hypersexualized. Or it's Rachel Zegler? These apolitical, edgy, basement-dwelling free speech warriors just want to protect the last sacred safe space for men. A place that's safe from being feminized. The last manly refuge where real men can still be men. Real men.
And I'm so tired of the world being dictated by emotions and feelings, and we have to accept everybody even though they don't accept us, and this new era is just a bunch of fucking pussy limp dick soy boy. Due to this all being resurfaced by Hassan, I suppose I will no longer be interacting with my father in any way, shape, or form on my stream.
So, how does this protectors of masculinity visually manifest?
Oh, but you're gonna fucking get a PDF? A fucking pedophile? You're gonna get a predator? He's a proven pedophile.
Shut the fuck up. Who are these fucking weirdos, man? Whew.
Memes, anime, and pop culture characters.
It's like memeing into existence a government agency.
And then speaking to the internet the way it likes to be spoken to, which is memes, actually.
The left can't meme.
Harris' campaign was trolling Trump.
They're already trolling him. He has been trying to troll the city back as much as he believes he's been trolled.
It's epic trolling, shall we say.
Just makes trolls like myself very happy.
I am become meme. Yeah, pretty much.
Bro, propaganda back then actually kind of slapped, but now we have this.
Du wirst abgeschossen.
They especially love using Wojak memes, like the stoic men who don't get triggered unlike those liberal SJW soy boys. Which is so fucking ironic. There's the NPCs, the chats, the soy faces, and so on and so on. And just to show you how painfully uncreative the right usually is, they constantly recycle the same old memes over and over and over again. Doge, laser red eyes, thug life, epic troll. And Dear God, if someone is still unironically using Pepe the Frog outside of a streaming context, it's a massive red flag. The fascist appropriation of Pepe has been thoroughly documented, and it's still a favorite among white supremacists and incels, the Groyper version especially. But Wojak memes are currently the newest victims of appropriation, which frustratingly is pretty smart. Like, try explaining to someone who's not online all the time that a fucking frog or Wojak could be a Nazi symbol. They understandably think I've lost my damn mind. What the fuck is Wojak? Solarpunk, Trump is Jesus, Jim Bros, Brie Larson, gamers, fucking memes, and now anime. Let's make this very clear again. Just because you like some of the same things a fascist would like doesn't mean you're fascist, nor am I implicating you are one. I love gaming, anime, and Star Wars too. But bro, how am I not supposed to talk about anime aesthetics when you constantly see this kind of shit? What another creator, the Cover Knuckle, noticed is that a particular subgenre of anime is especially popular in these circles. Mo anime girls. Cute, innocent, mostly underage, sometimes sexualized anime girls. Now, we're getting into the really weird stuff. Putting aside the pedo vibes, this kind of cutesy aesthetic whitewashes all meaning. Suddenly, friendly fascism becomes quite literal. Anime aesthetics are perfect for whitewashing, softening or trivializing imagery that would normally be seen as fucked up. It once again shields itself behind irony and dark humor to delegitimize criticism. This entire nerdy online bubble is so bizarrely fascinating to watch, because they're so hyper online, so niche, that even the people who agree with the ideology still find them ultra weird.
Yeah, biological value to create human offspring. Exactly. Like that's a lot of women's, like women have like an intrinsic innate value because they can have kids. And so whenever they're older and they're not able to have kids, or for whatever reason, that's not really as viable, then their biological value goes down in the eyes of a lot of guys. That's it. Yeah, beauty is their whole selling point. Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, the kid from The Last of Us isn't enough for us anymore. Hollywood's gone too woke ever since Harvey Weinstein left. Like, listen to yourself.
The movie stars are not as attractive anymore. I think women got uglier in movies ever since Harvey Weinstein left.
Yo, that's almost Andrew Tate level bar.
Games and movies aren't dying or under threat because of black Jewish trans women who are over 18 who don't want to fuck, or Brie Larson or pronouns. You are being manipulated and used by greedy corporations, grifters, and politicians, and you don't even realize it. This can't get any stupider, right?
All my niggas, Nazis, nigga.
Okay, I'll be real. Guys, listen. I'm Jewish. You guys know that. Hitler was a great leader. What he did was wrong. I obviously so, but he was a good leader.
What does a fascist mean?
It means you are a far right authorization on alternative. Oh my god.
Yeah, this definitely needs a whole video of its own.
You free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1.
This is unsurprisingly the wet dream of the far right. Unoriginal, appropriative, and hostile. AI is the pinnacle of all of it, not a shred of originality or creativity. So, of course, fascists love using it. What a lot of people notice especially, politicized AI slop is almost exclusively used by right-wing actors. But why? Writer Gareth Watkins argues that generative AI models primarily attacks copywriters, graphic designers, or artists. jobs associated with young, educated, urban, and often left-leaning workers. Imagine the White House hiring an artist to giblify an crying immigrant getting handcuffed by ICE agents. Ridiculousness aside, why should they waste any state resources when they can do this for free? There isn't just an utter contempt for art in general, but also for people and labor, creating depthless imagery that yields only the reading that its creator intended. No room for interpretations, self-reflection, or any value that typically comes from actual art. Grog, is this true? One of the reasons why I called Nazi art soulless and empty in meaning in my previous video is their absence of soul and thought-provoking avant-garde bravery, like the Italian futurists had. They instead insisted on the same heroic, romantic, conservative optics that were close to classical Greek and Roman art, the same realist, classicist slop over and over again, reproduced to death, using art as a politicized weapon to reinforce norms and national myths into society. But hey, at least an actual skilled artist was involved in the making of those pieces. And as flat and propagandizing the art maybe was, at least it looked good. And Leni Riefenstahl is to this day being taught in film schools. Where are far-right artists now? Today, the same reproduction of politicized art can be made at mass scale, without the use of any artists whatsoever. The right-wing aesthetic project is to flood the zone with bullshit in order to erode the intellectual foundations for resisting political cruelty. AI co-ops art and is perverting it. The ultimate weapon of aestheticization. The original artworks the AI models are trained on are being endlessly and endlessly reproduced, therefore softened, diluted, until the substance of the original piece is completely rinsed out. Historical events, fascist ideologies, even war crimes or genocidal fantasies are being transformed into superficial, aestheticized content. Everything is made beautiful. The obscene is being normalized. Everything becomes Tumblr core slop. And we're still in the very early stages of AI content. The pinnacle will be deepfakes. Once deepfakes become normalized, we'll have reached the final stage of total meaninglessness. Deepfakes are the ultimate tool of oppression.
In a September 2019 survey, researchers at DeepTrace found that of the deepfake videos they could identify online, 96% were pornographic.
It's going to get real ugly. Memes, AI slop, pronouns, like, we've lost our sense of shame. Nothing is obscene anymore. And if anyone gets offended, just say it was edgy, ironic humor. At least fascists in the past had the f***ing balls to be honest about it.
You're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
Listen to me. I am an immigrant. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Get the hell out.
I don't even like... I should get the hell out.
Yes.
Why?
I don't want you here.
Has our reality really become Reddit? Or worse, 4chan? Look at this clown and tell me he's not the embodiment of Reddit. But Musk and Trump are just symptoms of our time. A mirror reflecting how the world works. Narcissistic rich white men grifting their way to the top only to hoard even more wealth and power for themselves. The most powerful country on earth is now basically a content house. Everything is content now. A spectacle. Masking politics through optics and emotionalization in order to make it suitable for mass consumption. We truly live in the dumbest timeline imaginable.
Have they trained alligators to actually hunt the inmates? Is Tom Homan riding around in a fan boat? Is Donald Trump in the watchtower with a pair of binoculars?
And the worst part, it fucking works. Turning everything into ironic, memeable content has made everything meaningless. The restraints on fascist rhetoric are gone. The previously unthinkable is now normalized. No shame, no consequences. And no wonder no one takes you seriously when you call something fascist. Because you're right, it has lost its meaning. Which is the point? One key aspect of friendly fascism is the distraction from class war to culture war, because we remembered. Fascist victimhood drives away from material conditions to a narrative that's mostly based on emotions, scapegoats, and conspiracies. And what better way to hand out megaphones to the working class to express their frustrations than with the use of social media? This is the perfect megaphone, as expressions can now be monetized, more manipulated and controlled via algorithms, AI bots, or outright censorship by insecure CEOs. We now live in a deeply mutually dependent globalized economy that forces fascism to change its tactics. It can't appear as militant and loud as before, that's too obvious. The rising influence of private companies and therefore unelected officials in politics slowly replaces the interests of the people into the interests of profit. Within the framework of friendly fascism, this culture war is not merely reactionary rhetoric, but a structural tool of governance. By mobilizing cultural anxieties and moral panics, an authority-oriented worldview is normalized, one that increasingly influences media, education, academia, and jurisprudence. This dynamic gives rise to a form of soft authoritarianism. While democratic structures remain intact, they are substantively hollowed out through normative pressure, production of enemy images, and discursive polarization. To achieve higher profits, nations are now seen as businesses with privatized military-industrial complexes. In order to maximize profits, the working class needs to be repressed as much as possible to extract the maximal amount of capital out of their labor. Cheap production, higher profits. That means repressing unions, protests, deregulations, privatization, expanding police force, increasing surveillance, integrating the three separations of power, invading countries for resources, so far and so forth. Violence isn't now primarily executed with a gun, yet, but with paper, bureaucratic violence. Just look at Project 2025, the EU's healthcare system, or basically any asylum process or unemployment help. To soften or rather distract from a negative image, corporates use woke virtue signaling to promote their inclusivity and allyship. Corporates knowingly or unknowingly help fascist movements to flourish, as long as it protects their capital. Why else do you think Musk supported only far-right parties in Europe? Fascism, with the help of an oligarchy, now comes in the form of boring, bland corporatism that slowly creeps its way into society. Neoliberalism needs fascism to survive. They go hand in hand, because we can literally see that this system doesn't work anymore. Global crisis, inequality, war and suffering are at the rise, because neoliberalism is not a sustainable model. The top 1% of the world's population own more wealth than 95% of humanity. 95. Each one of us is losing trust in the system, and therefore in democracy. According to the Leipzig authoritarianism study in 2024, only 42% of people in Germany are still satisfied with democracy as it functions. That's a drop of 15% since 2022. And in East Germany, that number plummeted from 53.5% to 29.7%. Meanwhile, racist attitudes in the West jumped from 12.6% to 19.3%. In the East, it's still high at 31.5%. And around 1 in 5 people are now openly showing sympathy for authoritarian alternatives like dictatorship or a strong male leader. Fascists exploit this by tapping into the collective frustration. They amplify the feeling of despair and offer people an outlet for their rage. But actually helping people would destroy the breeding ground for fascism. That hasn't changed since the past. In the 1920s, mass image production became possible for the first time, a powerful propaganda tool for fascists. Today, we see a similar phenomenon, the internet. And don't even get me started again on AI. The aestheticization of politics has proven its power once again, whether in the 1920s or today. We are witnessing in real time the shift into a post-factual world where fairy tales and horror stories with dangerous monsters have become the new reality. Again, step by step, the tracks are being laid to build a society ready for violence. A society eager to restore traditional masculinity, revive national pride, and troll the enemies of the people. But friendly fascism is fading away. It has become more bold, louder, more aggressive. The snake has finally begun to show its face again, and we are doing nothing. We have been completely desensitized. Hitler and Mussolini were connecting themselves to history in order to achieve an immortal legacy that is remembered as glorious and intimidating. Today's fascism comes with a corporate, memeable, ironic wink.
I'm not going to cry a fucking river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a fuck. They're terrible people. It's not even a question. These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways. It is that simple. No, I don't feel bad for them. I don't feel sorry for them. I don't care. I don't support them.
Every cult needs enemies to sustain the constant feeling of victimhood and revolutionary progress. Defining in-groups and out-groups is crucial in every fascist ideology, otherwise the illusion of righteousness would fall apart. Everyone is out to get you, to destroy the beautiful thing you're being part of, to destroy your cause, to destroy your leader, to destroy what you love, your country, your culture, your identity, and your life. There's always one conspiracy after another. Fascists are spreading the belief that strict, unchangeable natural hierarchies exist, based on race, gender, or culture. The ones on top, the supremacists, will decide your worth. If you're feminist, refuse to be a tradwife, or have slept with more than one man, you are already used and undesirable.
The feel when we control your bodies. Hey, we control your bodies. Guess what? Guys win again, okay? Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. It's your body, my choice. We will keep you down forever. You will never control your own bodies. Your body, our choice.
This will reduce your worth. If you produce art, content, or other forms of creative expression that don't align with right-wing ideals, are no longer labeled as entartete Kunst, but are instead branded as woke. Anyone who challenges conservative social values is automatically considered woke, a neo-Marxist, a communist, a beta sheep. This will reduce your worth.
And there was a wisdom in what Richard Nixon said approximately 40, 50 years ago. He said, and I quote, "The professors are the enemy."
If you're an academic or professor, part of the entertainment industry, or a politician who doesn't submit to the president, you are seen as part of the deep state, the elites, and are therefore labeled as communists, globalists, Freemasons, or satanic pedophiles. This will reduce your worth. If you're part of the queer community, you will be seen as sick, perverted, and pedophilic. Again. This will reduce your worth. If you don't have a full functioning body or mind, your genetics are seen as broken or infected that needs to be dealt with. This will reduce your worth. If you're black or an immigrant, you will be seen as barbaric, aggressive, and unintelligent. This will reduce your worth.
Honestly, I'm pro-genocide. It sounds really shitty, but I think that Israel should just drop its fucking borders about where it is now, and basically Palestinians can go live in another place. That's really shitty, but that's about where I'm at.
If you're a Muslim, you will be seen as anti-Semitic, barbaric, and a terrorist. Ever since 9/11, and now with the extermination of Palestinians in Gaza, the dehumanization and death toll of Muslims worldwide have rapidly grown. This will definitely reduce your worth.
I saw in Auschwitz that if a dominant group wants to dehumanize others, so as the Nazis wanted to dehumanize me, these dominant group must first be dehumanized in a way themselves by diminishing their empathy due to propaganda and indoctrination. I am appalled about how hateful, how dehumanized, that they do not see any human aspect in any Palestinian anymore. It's terrible. The Zionists have not any right whatsoever to use the Holocaust for any purpose.
And if you're Jewish, you could be, again, seen as a parasite that conspires against your people. The murder of 6 million people, you and the generational trauma you've suffered will be weaponized by the people in power to justify the war crimes and genocide, resulting in a surge of modern anti-Semitism. Again, this will reduce your worth. One of the most naive mistakes is the belief that you yourself would be safe under a fascist regime, no matter how much you submit to the state. One question will always linger in your head. Am I safe?